Swamp Thing number 24, written by Charles Soule, art by Andre Bresson. So last issue was kind of just the end of a little side story with Constantine and Cedar and some other stuff, but it ended off with Cedar showing up, punching out Capuchin, and leaving a message for Swamp Thing. This issue picks up slightly earlier, where Cedar has arrived back in the desert where he made an oasis before, and this guy's waiting for him being like, hey, Swamp Thing showed up and totally trashed your oasis. Can we have another one, please? And Cedar's like, did he say why? And he's like, no, he just said it shouldn't exist. That's all he gave. And yeah, so could we have another one? And then Cedar's like, well, if Swamp Thing says it shouldn't exist, who am I to argue? I gotta go now. And so he makes a portal and travels to beat up Capuchin and do all that stuff. So cutting to now, Swamp Thing arrives and says like, hey, Capuchin, sorry, what happened here? And it's like, oh, don't worry about it. And like, I'm also a fast healer. That's part of my thing. So my arm will be fixed soon enough. And Swamp Thing gives her like a makeshift sling out of twigs and vines and stuff. And she apologizes for not being able to defend herself. She's like, oh, I am here to fight for you. And I failed. I let this man go. And she's like, okay, well, that's not your job. And she's like, that's my only job. So he looks at the message, which says, it's time, Professor. And she asks what it means. And he's like, oh, I was a researcher before I was the Avatar. And she's like, aren't you still a scientist? And like, that wasn't taken away from you. And he's like, touche, fair enough. But very few people know that Alec Holland, the researcher, became Swamp Thing. So I don't know who this is. Regardless, he'll be back. And me and him are going to have a long overdue conversation. As for you, Capuchin, I'm finally going to like deal with you. I'm finally going to give you something to do. So they go over to what was Abigail Arcane's house and says, yeah, you can stay here. You've already gotten hurt. I'm not going to let that happen again. And she's like, oh, whose house is this? And it's like, a friend. And she's not coming back. And he's like, oh, okay, this is your ex-lover's house. That's awkward. I'd rather not. And she basically says like, look, I don't really want you to be here, but it's better than being in the swamp. By the way, I don't even know anything about you. Like, what's your deal? And Capuchino's like, well, you've been running off every time I've tried to explain it to you, but okay, here it goes. I was born in 1100 in France, and that's 1100 using the current calendar. And then as she's trying to explain, Swamp Thing is like, wait a minute, hold on, Cedar's here, I gotta go. And she's like, seriously? Oh my god. So over at the Parliament of Trees, where, reminder, they're like saplings at this point. They're very small trees. We see the Cedar is there, and he's just like, you're the Parliament. You represent the green. I'm not. Why did you give me these powers if you didn't want me using them? And they basically said like, well, you demanded them because you saved Alec's life. Like, we gave you the powers, but we have made our choice. Alec is the champion, not you. And then Cedar is about to do something, but then Swamp Thing just sprouts up out of nowhere and says, Cedar, you wanted to talk, let's talk. And he just starts attacking Cedar. And Cedar's like, dude, stop. I do genuinely just want to talk. I didn't want to fight or anything like that. And he's like, nope, too late for that. And he keeps on in his head saying like, oh, I should snap his arm for what he did to Capuchin. And there's that little voice in his head that's like, do it. Kill him. Do it. So at one point, finally, he grabs Cedar, throws him down the ground, and Cedar's hood comes off. And he's like, wait a minute. I know you. You're Jason Woodrue. And honest to God, I completely forgot that Alec Holland even knew Jason Woodrue, but they do establish that Jason is the one who saved Alec's life and threw him into the swamp, thus allowing him to become Swamp Thing. And Swamp Thing's like, I think that memory was taken away from me back in last year's annual. So sorry. No, I don't entirely remember that, but okay, is that true, Parliament? And Parliament's like, yeah, no, he threw you in the swamp. He's the whole reason. That's why we gave him certain gifts. He's able to do things with the green. Not quite swamp things, but things. And Jason's like, yeah, no, my thing is I have seeds, any type of seeds, and I can use them and they do things, whatever I will them to do. And together we can do so much more, Swamp Thing. And Jason's like, okay, hear me out. Why not make the whole world green? Like, what's stopping us from like we can feed the world, we can fuel it, we can end disease and such. We can do all that if we just make infinite green. So why aren't we doing that? And he's like, oh, Jesus Christ. Okay. There's a balance, man. Look, remember you made like some rice patties in a field in like Bangladesh? And he's like, yeah, yeah, I fed a whole village with that. And it's like, right. But because you did that, a bunch of coral reef stuff just, or a kelp forest just disappeared off the coast of this country. And the entire ecosystem there died because it was just gone. There's a limited, you can't just make new green. It has to come from somewhere else. And Jason's like, oh, I didn't know that. Okay, sorry. And Swamp Thing's like, you didn't know that because you aren't as connected with the green. You're not as interwoven as I am. And Jason's like, I could be. I just need to like practice more. I want to be part of this, please. I really like the green. And Swamp Thing's like, no, no, no. Look, people have died because of your actions here. People are dead. I can't let you keep going. And so he turns to the Parliament and says, you made a mistake. Take away his powers. And Jason screams out, no. He's like, I just did what you asked and I made a mistake. It's not worth me losing what I've looked for here. And Swamp Thing's like, what are you waiting for? But it's go ahead. But the Parliament doesn't do anything. And Jason's like, you want me to prove I'm worthy? Fine, I'll show you. And he throws out a seed. It lands on Swamp Thing. And Swamp Thing's like, seriously, dude, I'm the avatar of the green. I'm not going to let this thing sprout. Like, I clearly have control over this. And Jason's like, oh, is that so? And then all of a sudden, it erupts into this giant, like, Venus flytrap looking thing that starts latching onto Alec. And Swamp Thing then immediately starts charging. He makes, like, a wooden spear on his arm. And Jason is able to crack right through it via his staff that he holds. And the plant starts attacking Alec's head. It starts stabbing him through his eye. And he's like, jeez, why is the Parliament not stopping this? What is happening? And so Jason stands before the Parliament and he's like, you see, I'm worthy. I'm totally good for this. And all of a sudden, Capucine comes out of nowhere and kicks Jason in the face. And he falls down to the ground. And we see Alec he manages to get some wood around Jason Woodrue, and the little voice in his head is saying, like, kill him now, he's too dangerous to be left alive. And he says, like, yep, I gotta do it, I gotta kill him. But he stops himself, and Jason basically starts like, oh, I totally beat Swamp Thing, it's only because this chick showed up, whoever she is. And he says, like, we've beaten him, I'm not gonna let him go, but like, we have to deal with this. And we see Jason is let go of the wood stuff. He throws another seed at Capucine, but it doesn't sprout. And his green powers have been revoked. And Swamp Thing's like, finally, Jesus, man, Parliament, what are you doing? And at that point, the Parliament chimes in and says, like, hey, yeah, no, we got rid of his powers so you didn't kill him, but we're going to give him back. And Swamp Thing's like, excuse me? You're going to do what now? And he's like, look, he just smoked your ass in a one-on-one fight. Like, he's really good at what he does here. Here's what we're going to do, okay? We are going to give you time to train and become the best version of the avatar of the green as you can be. Same to Jason. And then you two are going to fight again at a time of our choosing. And if he wins, he becomes the new avatar of the green. That is the will of the Parliament. And Swamp Thing just stands there for a second and then screams like, what? And that's it. That's the issue. He just screams, what? I think I saw Cedar being Jason Woodrue beforehand. I don't know if like I caught a spoiler or if I just figured it was, but yeah, that makes sense. I like the Jason, like, it seemed even from the beginning that he was doing this stuff altruistically. Like, he was trying to do good in general. And then, like, this guy came up and said, like, yeah, no, the Avatar said that the Oasis shouldn't exist. And Jason's just like, oh, okay, well, let me go check with the bosses. Like, he's not evil in his own right, at least not yet. He wants to be the Avatar of the Green, and that's making him an enemy of Swamp Thing. But, like, inherently, he's not doing anything wrong. It's just that he doesn't understand the system as a whole. So I like him as a villain in that regard. I like him as someone who I can fully see the side of, and it makes sense. And the Parliament is such just a bag of dicks here of, oh, yeah, we're just going to make you fight for it. Tee-hee. So overall, I think this is. I'm gonna give this one a solid 8. I really do enjoy it. I think it's a great issue of Swamp Thing. I think that it ends on a little bit of a weird note of Swamp Thing just saying what. I think it could have been a bit more stronger of an ending, but it's a funny looking panel. I'll give it that. So 8 for this.